Welcome to the fifth and final session of day one for the U.S. Biochar Initiative, USDA NRCS Code 336 and 808 Soil Carbon Amendment Deep Dive. We're going to have a lot of fun today in the Q&A. And what we're going to do is we're going to be starting off with Josiah Hunt, who is a USBI board member. All right, take it away, Josiah. Let's go ahead and we'll start into the extended Q&A. So, all right, everybody. And then also what I'm going to do is we're going to bring in folks with that raise their hand, and I'll allow you to speak. And so then that way we can have more interaction with the audience. So thank you, everyone. It was a great event.
So I wanted to ask a question of Michael Margot, if you're still available.
Yes, I'm still here.
Yeah, I've been trying to read through. There's so many questions in the Q&A. Great stuff. I've been trying to pull through what are some repeating themes here, and one of them I've seen a lot comes around kind of the application rate, and another element of that would be like, what is the threshold for low organic matter? If that's a resource constraint, that you have low organic matter or low soil organic carbon. How does the NRCS go about? I know you kind of touched on this already, but I'm wondering if you could dive a little bit deeper. How does the NRCS go about determining what the threshold is for low or sufficient? And second to that would be determining the application rate. What, are there some standards for NRCS to determine the optimal application rate to correct for a low organic matter or low soil organic carbon?
Okay, that's a excellent question. And that I guess I don't have the answer to that. At this point, we can use the guidance that is available to us from industry, any resources available to help research that can guide us with answering those questions on how much amendment is needed and which amendment is needed to make a significant difference. The soil survey provides information, data in Web Soil Survey provides information on references of soil type, soil conditions, and on what is capable of a certain type of soil within a given area. And if you're significantly lower than that based on your soil test, then there's, that could serve as a benchmark based on what is expected of that site through a soil survey information. And so each soil, through a soil map, you would be provided what soils are available. But let's say you're down 10% or 1% of organic matter, or you want to increase it to, how much amendment, how much biochar, what's a quantity? That's where, we don't have exact specs available just yet. And I guess in the very near future, we would have some of that information. That's part of the reason we support national agreements, with our partners with ARS, other organizations to help us provide some guidance on that. And, it's not an exact, every condition, every site is going to be unique. And, but I guess that's information we are working on, and then provide case studies as example of where it has worked and where differences have been made. And but that is an excellent question that we hope to be providing with everyone's assistance, basically.
Well, I think that this program will provide a lot more research opportunities with the USDA funded, the NRCS funded biochar applications, which do have some sort of observation component to them as well.
Right.
So that's a stay tuned kind of thing.
Yes,
thank you for that. Thank you.
And what I would, Josiah, this is Kristen. What I would say is that, it's what's in the tool that's on Web Soil Survey in terms of identifying low organic carbon soils. It's just a tool, right? There's variation within those bands that you see on Web Soil Survey as to whether or not, you could be in a band that has generally low organic carbon, but if you've been amending your soil over time, you can have very high organic carbon. And that's why the standard requires you to get a soil test beforehand, and you can compare with your soil type and your soil series how your carbon looks in comparison to your soil series. But regardless of anything, we're not going to take a desert soil like an aridisol and change it to a mollisol overnight through a single amendment, no matter how much carbon you add at once. That's a process that takes a really, really long time to build fertile soil. So, if you want to add biochar to your soil so that your soil moves up 0.1% or 0.5% in carbon, that depends on a lot of things. It depends on how deep you're planting. It depends on, or how deep you're incorporating. It depends on what area of an acre you're amending. And we'll have those tools available on the Atlas. But the point is to raise soil carbon. And so no matter how much you add, you should be able to accomplish that. It's just in context with other goals and cropping goals and whatnot. So stay tuned for tomorrow's presentation. And Josiah, I know you'll be touching on this too.
Yes, I will. So just to kind of recap, it sounds like there's ways to determine what would be low organic matter, and that's always going to be a regional assessment. And then as far as what's optimal, it sounds like there's not a ceiling established, but that as Kristen was noting, any incremental improvement on organic matter would be seen as a positive. And so as long as it's moving in that right direction, then it will be seen as a win, I guess. Thanks. That was very helpful. And as Kristen was saying, yes, we'll be touching on a lot of that stuff tomorrow and some of the tools that can be used to help.
Yeah, I want to go ahead and let Jacek.
Hey, yeah, John, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. First of all, thank you for your event. A lot of good information. I just wanted to let everybody know, just to add to the overall success of the overall industry, that we are just about to embark on startup in Puerto Rico of a project that I'm one of the principals for, called Biorestorative Ideas, that will be making biochar come next month from invasive bamboo. This project is beginning of a series of projects on this particular feedstock, along with other projects also in various stages of development in the US. So just FYI, this is probably a good success for the whole industry. And the biochar is already being pre-sold into small holding coffee farmers on the island. And we're hoping to really have multiple circularities associated with better soil outcomes and better coffee. I'm an avid coffee drinker, so that helps. And utilization of the 808-336 program that's already live in Puerto Rico with the engagement of the local staff. So that's one announcement. And since I have the microphone, I also had a question on the session for allowable levels of contaminants, and especially from PAH perspective, if there's any updates on that. And I know this might not be answerable right now. It might have to be left a little bit later on for the USDA NRCS guys, but just curious whether, polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons would be allowed for in this application.
Yeah.
Josiah might know.
Yeah, Josiah might know, and Jacek, thanks.
There's parameters listed in the Conservation Practice Standard 336 as for what allowable is.
So that has not been updated, right? Because that's somewhat, it's not old, but it hasn't evolved in quite a while. And those are pretty generous standards. So as long as those are okay, then we're good.
I think you might need, I can't attest to what document you're looking at. I know that there was a couple different versions of the 808 I saw, and then there was the 336 that was released during public comment period, and then another one has been released since. So you could check the website for for the latest version. Check USDA NRCS for the latest version,
Sure.
and the parameters are listed there. And there is additionally recommendation to seek additional certification through through IBI, and the IBI is working on updating their standards as well, which is very comprehensive already.
All right, Bryce, you're up.
All right. 336 is clearly written to include like biosolids, biochar. I mean, you've got the 503 regulations built into it, and including that as part of the feedstocks. However, you also have the registration requirements that the biochar must meet IBI definitions or requirements. I'm just wondering, do the IBI requirements currently encompass biochar, biosolids, biochar? I mean, it's got a much lower fixed carbon content, a lot of different characteristics. This would be common with any manure-based biochar relative to wood. Are those things, hurdles in this application, or is that something IBI has adapted to ensure biosolids biochar is included in its definitions?
Yeah, I can address a little bit of that. If you look at the IBI standard, they're actually biochars are characterized in about 3 different classes: 10% carbon, 30% plus carbon, 60% plus carbon. So, yeah, there are no particular restrictions as to the source material. There's minimum carbon content, and that recognizes that each one of those materials has different qualities. So obviously, the lower the carbon, higher ash content, you've got probably more nutrients or liming capacity and so on.
Yeah, exactly. Organic matter, et cetera, that kind of interact with it. But, that answers my question. It's also higher density, so it gets penalized on the weight side or density side of it too under the program, but that's, understandable. All right, that's my question. Appreciate it. Just want to make sure there's no hiccups.
All right, Shane, you had your hand up.
Yeah, my name is Shane McGolden with Ecochar and Earth Care. You were talking about a ratio of input fuel versus output biochar, and our systems are able to process about 200 tons of wet manure. That's usually what we process as manure, and go from about 200 tons down to about 40 dry tons, and then we process that into about between 4 to 6 tons of biochar. And that obviously contains all the nutrients and the fixed carbon that were present in the source material. We mostly use manures as a source fuel, which is a little bit non-standard in the biochar world. Most are using fuels or other woody biomass, or woods or other biomass, switchgrass, etc. Just one.
What's your primary market?
Well, one of the biggest things we do is just getting the manure off the farmer's hands. The downstream thermal process is used to drive anything from drying the manure to be used as source fuel, or the energy can be used to heat a building, drive a boiler for energy production. Just anything you can do with thermal energy, basically. But yeah, in the end, our byproduct is biochar. And
yeah, I'm familiar with some of them. A lot of manure based going into turf management. So that's kind of what I was interested in, is if you're doing it with filtration or other markets.
We have a lot of. We do heavy metal filtration. We have a project we just put in recently using geotextile socks to remove heavy metals from a creek from a nearby processing plant. And we just filled up these socks with biochar and laid them out in the ditch. And we just recently got back the results from the lab, and they absorbed basically everything that was going in. We had the input and output results, and it was incredibly effective.
Excellent. Excellent. And glad to hear your, dude, that's a lot of conversion to be taking place. So, Shane, I'm going to hop on. We've got a number of folks with their hands up, so we're going to.
I would like for you to get back to me though, later on, if you can. I'd like to get more information to you.
Okay. My email address is john@biochar-us.org. So please reach out and I'll happily respond. I'm also going to be at the Compost Conference event next week. So if you're there, stop on by the USBI booth.
Good talking to you. Thanks for the talk today.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Lisa, if you're there.
I'm here.
Okay. You have some questions for us?
Well, if you could put in here somewhere, I would like to connect with the manure guy.
Yeah, Lisa, you're with Aqua Street, correct?
I am, yeah.
Okay. When he emails me, since you and I have already been talking, when he emails me, I will send you his info.
I would appreciate it. I just had a conversation with the Port of Tillamook Bay about trying to find something to move forward. And since it's in the heartland of cow manure and woody biomass, I'm still in hopes there's something intelligent. I also wanted to at least bring up, it may not be appropriate exactly for this conference, and after 40 years, it's pretty hard to shock me, but I will say that I had an inquiry that did just about shock me of some young kid who goes, wow, if we could just get biochar to soak up PFAS and then send it out to agricultural land, it's like, oh my God. So it does kind of make me wonder whether or not the biochar industry, for at least I'm going to pick on water treatment, is looking at an end life cycle where you would send it out to agricultural land as opposed to where it ought to be going, like a class 1 or a standard landfill. But as I see regulations dip off, and some people, I appreciate the honesty that's in this conference where this biochar isn't a solution for everything, because it isn't. But I will say that having somebody think that we're just going to make biochar, send it out, sop up a bunch of toxic stuff, and then we're just going to sell it to somebody in agriculture and take some credits along the way, I did just about fall out of my chair.
So yeah, I'll address that.
Hi, Tom.
As far as PFAS, hi Lisa. The PFAS studies with biochar are at early stages. There'll be an excellent webinar. I think it's 25th coming up next week. International Biochar Initiative has a webinar on PFAS. But just to kind of give you a capsule, what they found is that carbonizing biosolids under the right conditions will destroy PFAS. And the other thing is that certain biochar made under certain conditions will adsorb and stabilize or immobilize PFAS. So those are both very encouraging from a research point of view.
Well, knocking off a carbon fluoride bond is not for the faint of heart.
Well, that's true. But what I'm saying is that there's nothing set in stone yet, but we've got some very encouraging results.
Well, I'm encouraged to hear. I'm encouraged to hear that, Tom. Thank you.
So we'll just hope that all of that is borne out with more rigorous and larger scale field testing.
Well, some common sense and intelligence. Thank you.
Yeah. Let's see. Somebody in the chat asked if biochar from manure still contains the same nutrients as the manure. No, that's due to the exposure to the high heats. So,
yeah, the nitrogen is reduced, but the potassium and the phosphorus, as well as the source carbon, are maintained. The nitrogen is really the only thing that takes a hit.
Okay.
And to work back around to the other bit. She was asking about the PFAS, and yes, we have had very successful results of PFAS being destroyed via the gasification process, and that is something that we have noticed and has been a big talking point with our company recently because it has been such a big talking point environmentally. And gasification completely destroys PFAS, PFAs and PFAS.
Thank you for answering that. I'm sure you'll be attending the IBI webinar soon.
Yes.
In the Q&A, Kathleen published the link for that. Shane, there was a quick question. What's the ash content on your biochar?
With our manure chars, it's between about 25 and 35% carbon. Our WDG char is about 68. That's the only thing that is a biomass, a woody biomass that we process. Everything else is manures, and that's usually in the 25 to 35% range.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. Kathleen's pointing out that the webinar is on the 27th. It's in the Q&A for anybody that wants to follow that link. Okay, thank you. All right, I'm going to move on to Don Smith. So, Don, if you're there. And thank you for your patience.
Yes, I've tried to figure this out. I was the one who asked the question about using biochar on reclamation mine sites. What we're doing is something that's not been done before. And it's actually a multi-level type operation. We've conducted some experiments using hemp, which is a hyperaccumulator, to agrimine rare earth elements. And sure enough, it's working, and picked up a lot of lithium. And what we're trying to do to these sites is to get these rare earth elements up, but we also want to convert the sites from dead soil, stranded investment, into live soil and investment grade farmland. So that's one of the reasons I was questioning whether these kind of operations would be applicable, fundable by this biochar program. And it doesn't sound like it is, simply because it is mine land. And despite the fact that we're trying to convert it into agricultural land. So I'm just trying to figure out, is there a way? Now, in some areas, we do not want to use biochar. Biochar will actually take the rare earths, lock them up, and drag them down through the soil over the years. So in some areas, we don't want to do that. In some areas, we do want to put down the biochar. So again, it's kind of complex. It's not being done before. But yeah,
that's really interesting. My understanding is a lot of these mine sites are all on public land, I think, which is one of the things that isn't necessarily entirely addressed by the Code 808. So
yeah, if it's public land, it's an abandoned mine then. Most of the properties here in West Virginia are owned by relatively large land companies who have leased it off to coal companies, or the coal companies themselves own the land. Okay. And of course, like I say, a lot of the public lands that have been strip mined, that is, they're public because they forfeited their bonds. So yeah, and we're looking at the whole shebang, but the processes we're developing for agri-mining certainly are compelling. So, but again, we're trying to take a very, very large, holistic view of these sites. I mean, if you Google up images of mountaintop removal in Appalachia, it looks like hell without the lid on it. So, right. And we're trying to get funded to convert these properties. And I'm a sole believer in biochar. I make my own out of hemp and bamboo. So it's, again, one of those things we're just looking for every avenue possible to make this thing work. And again, it doesn't sound like this program is going to fit. But I am
Yeah.
looking for guidance nonetheless.
But what you have is definitely important work. We need to take care of that. So thank you for your efforts, and I think it's really interesting that you have you found that hemp angle, because there's certainly a lot of that available. Tell you what, email me and keep me posted on what you're doing. Maybe we could do a story on you for the USBI newsletter. So,
What was your email again?
It's the John at biochar-us.org. You can also email info@biochar-us or biochar-us.org, and it'll get to me eventually. So,
Yeah, I'm just typing this down.
We've actually done a bit of work with some cannabis producers out in California with biochar and the viability and increase in their yield, and we've had fantastic success.
Who is this speaking?
That's Don.
This is Shane McGolden.
Oh,
Shane,
sorry,
okay.
Shane. With
Yeah,
the manure
it's
management.
yeah, we're I have grown a good bit of hemp. I've gone from this state's smallest farmer to the state's largest farmer and back down to the state's smallest, if not microscopic, hemp farmer. So, but nonetheless, the things that we're working on is starting to draw a lot of attention. And again, the reason I'm here is to see if there's an angle where we can fit this program in. And like I say, just from listening to the conversation, it doesn't look like I can do anything with it except on farmlands.
Right. And like they kind of said over and over again, please reach out to your local NRCS agent, find out if this is maybe an applicable code, if maybe there's a code applicable to your harvesting of the hemp materials. There may be a number of the NRCS programs that are suitable for you. I want to go ahead and real quick, Don, I wanted to point out that Kelpie Wilson, who's a USBI board member, points out that the U.S. Forest Service Wood Innovation Grant Program would be a potential source for funding of a mine reclamation project, but it would require using woody biomass. So Kelpie, thanks for that input.
And thank you too. And that is through the U.S. Forest Service?
Yeah, the Wood Innovation Grant. Go ahead and email me again with the follow-up, and I'll get back to you. So
Copy that. Now, understood.
Okay.
Thanks.
And Tristan, thank you for your patience.
Yeah, thank you guys for both being here. Hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can.
So you may not be the best person to answer this question, but I am with eHemp House, and we are building mobile processing units to put on site at landowners' properties. This will then be able to process hemp or manure and turn it into biochar and wood vinegar and all those good byproducts. But more what I wanted to ask about is if we wanted to work with more than one farmer, a group of farmers, but still make it easier for them to apply for these type of grants more as a project partner. Is the RCPP program more eligible, or the EKIP, or what kind of route would you suggest going if you wanted to work with a group of?
Yeah, I don't entirely know the answer to that. And Michael, if you're still here, he may be able to answer more of it. So I don't understand it to be provider specific on the biochar. Effectively, the only way that you're a partner is that you're providing them with a commercial service and product, so they identify how much they're buying in terms of the cubic yard. Maybe if you have a grant writer on staff, and you can, or somebody that's familiar with processing government paperwork.
Mm-hmm.
Tom,
Sure.
do you have some input on this?
No, I don't. I had a separate question, actually.
Okay.
Wanted to highlight a question about someone's asking for clarification on developed or urban lands. How would the 808 or 336 be used or applied on developed or urban lands?
Well, yeah, that's basically small areas within urban landscapes that are in ag production. There's, as Ilana mentioned earlier on eligibility, there's no minimum size acreage or area or maximum, but urban is just kind of referring to farming, any ag production within an urban setting. And that's how scenarios were based on that. And so the standard is applicable for community garden type areas, or there's that's within small scales, and within the agency there is a priority of focus to have policy and assistance available for small scale operations.
Great, thank you.
Wanted to highlight a question here from Mayo Ryan. He says, in our area, the Salinas Valley of California is otherwise known as the salad bowl of America. The adjusted gross income requirement will not allow most growers to participate. Is there any way to exempt the soil carbon amendment program from the AGI requirement?
Yeah, well, I do not have an answer to that. I could just take a note of that. I don't know about exemptions for the AGI requirements. I don't think, I think Ilana and Matt both had to drop off now. But that program, that policy on eligibility is kind of out of my wheelhouse. And I don't know if there's a way, where I know there's probably a lot of questions that are, in the chat that, you could send them our way and we can help address them and maybe email them to John with some answers if they were kind of categorized or.
And perhaps questions of that nature might be better focused towards the state representatives.
Yeah, then right, exactly. And that's good point. And at the local field office. So, some of those farmers visiting the local USDA service center can basically go through the eligibility requirements and fill out the paperwork there.
Thank you, Michael.
Hey, Michael, in the chat, Michael Hagan.
Hi, thanks for taking my question. Quick follow-up from earlier about site-produced biochar. And somebody talked about the need to have testing. I'd like some more clarification on that. Is the lab testing that's required, this $400-ish lab testing for site-produced biochar for this practice, is that something that would be per batch of biochar I produce? Is it going to be? Am I just going to take random samples out of my aggregate that I'm going to apply? How many tests am I going to have to do in order to figure out whether this is cost effective?
Yeah, I don't. USDA, Michael, do you have an answer to that?
We don't have any specs on how to test it and how many samples from the biochar itself. But we do have the requirement that it be tested, and I would kind of whatever lab or that is providing the analysis can maybe provide that information on how to sample it and how to collect it.
Okay, so it's the main thing I want to make sure is it's not a situation where every time I do a burn, I have to test that particular batch.
All right, so now we're going to bring in Tony.
Hello.
And, whoops. Sorry. You know what, Tony? I'm going to ask you to be on mute for a moment. But Michael, do you feel like your request was answered in terms of the testing?
Yeah, I think that helps. Thanks very much.
Okay, yeah, thank you. All right, Tony, your turn, buddy.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
So thanks for doing this great show. I'm I work for NRCS in the state of Maine, and I'm a soil science state resource conservationist, and we are working hard to try to incorporate and the 336 practice into our bureaucratic process. And it's a bit of an endeavor, and thanks to Michael and the others for representing us. I just wanted to say, somebody asked about the what we call the AGI, the adjusted gross income cap of 900 grand. That's pretty rock solid in the EQIP program, unless that changes in the next farm bill. RCPP, however, has waivers, and so if in fact an RCPP is developed that was wrapped around 336 and perhaps associated practices, then the applicants for financial assistance through that program could be waived as far as the AGI goes. And yes, that would be huge to be able to work with a lot of our bigger agricultural producers across the country. We have the same problem here in Maine with some potato producers and that kind of thing. So, and then also with forestry. So I just want to mention that there are some avenues. And for those of you all are in private industry, if you have the ear of your legislators, they're working on a new farm bill, and it's a popular stance for them to be anti-big farmer getting government money, but I think if ever there was a case that you might be able to make it right now. So I'm not lobbying. I'm just saying that that's a place for you to be thinking about that, and that's all. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for that input. It is important that we all participate in this, and that we do exactly that. We practice some communication skills. We reach out to our local state organizations, lawmakers, let them know what we're interested in as producers in order to amend our soils. It's also a lot of money that comes into the state. So, get it spent and grow bigger crops. There is somebody that, and maybe Josiah, you can help on this a little bit. The question that came in from an anonymous attendee at 147, talking about us as being a small farmer with 100 acres. We make our own biochar and add it to the soil, but he's confused if he can add it with the incentives since they're making their own, and that it's not eligible for any land that's greater than 15%. I think that's not necessarily what I was intentionally looking at, but yes, it is daunting to take the time to apply, because that does take a lot of time when you could be working in the field and doing all your other book work, right? So go ahead, Josiah. I've got to run. I'm sorry. Oh, okay. Yeah, all right. So I've got a hard stop. All right. Thank you. So on this, for this response, tomorrow we've got a whole nother Q&A session, and we will have Josiah is going to be talking more, and Josiah has actually quite a bit of extensive in-field experience with installing biochar, and so we're going to be talking about this. Now, anonymous attendee from 144 talking about regulations and incentives to farmers to abandon historically proven standards and practices for something new that is more expensive and hasn't been proven on a large scale: commercial agriculture and in their specific cultivation region. How receptive are agricultural producers to implementation of biochar into their fertilizer practice? The feedback that this person's received is that there's always someone selling a product that's claiming it's going to increase crop output. I agree with that. There always is somebody. We look into those and we hear about them. I've presented, I've had personal experience where I presented data on biochar to a compost producer. The guy told me he thought it was snake oil, and the very next year he had a line of biochar amended compost. So adoption, I think, depends on mass market appeal, right? Based on the earlier reports that I shared on the slide deck, you saw that the number of technical papers that are peer-reviewed technical papers that are coming out are, at this point, there are over 200 of them a year, and that the number of patents are increasing on a yearly basis as well. Add to that the literally millions and hundreds of millions of dollars that are going into new production plants. There's a number of those folks that are here that are investing significantly in biochar. We are seeing that it works. This is really not new. It's old. It's earth science. But like we said, biochar is not a magic bullet. So having awareness of what we're applying to our soils, why, where, when, and how is critically important. But overall, we do find that the common response is success. So again, we're now at the 4 o'clock timeline. So I want to thank everybody for coming today. I think we'll close it up. I'm going to go ahead. I will work to include the chat in the documentation. We will be providing slide decks and videos. Anybody that's registered for this event, we will be emailing you directly with the link to YouTube. On behalf of the U.S. Biochar Initiative and the USDA NRCS Soil Health Division, I want to thank you for your time today. We really appreciate everybody. So thank you so much. Yes, thank you, everybody. And with that, day 1 is in the bag. Thank you. This wrapped up day 1, session 5 of the U.S. Biochar Initiative in conjunction with the USDA NRCS Soil Health Division. Deep dive into the code 336 and 808 soil carbon amendment. We had a lot of great input today in the Q&A and in the sessions. Special thank you to Michael Margot, Alana Cohen, Matt Flint, also knocking it out of the park. Thank you so much, Matt. All right, we had board members Josiah Hunt and Executive Director Tom Miles, and let's not forget Kristen Tripp from the Pacific Northwest Biochar Atlas. Again, thank you everyone for attending. Thank you for your consideration of sponsorship, and thank you to our sponsors for making this program possible. All right, I look forward to tomorrow with another round of fantastic sessions. We will talk soon.